Hey Mycroft, what's the weather like?
With a high of 37 and a low of 32, Coralville has mist and is currently 32 degrees.
What you just saw right there is Mycroft. That's an open source voice assistant and what I'm going to be talking about today. Basically Mycroft is a free to use software system that I personally am running on a Raspberry Pi, which is basically like, it's a computer that's like this big. And here's a video of it here, along with the rest of my setup. The Raspberry Pi is about $35 for the Raspberry Pi B, which is the version I'm currently using. And then the Snowball microphone, which I'm also using, cost me a bit more, but I highly recommend it. It's really good at picking up sound and just generally an all-around good product to use. And then the speakers themselves were just kind of crappy $20 speakers I picked up at Best Buy. So the thing I really like about Mycroft is that it's open source and customizable. So if you're like me and you're a huge nerd for programming stuff, Mycroft is actually going to be the perfect solution for you. It's entirely open source. It's written in mostly Python. There's some stuff involving Raspbian in my particular version because I'm using a Raspberry Pi. There's several different versions that are all essentially the same. There's a Linux version, there's an Android version. It doesn't really have an APK yet, so the only way you can get it is through Android Studio. But for me, my favorite option was just the Raspberry Pi. You can flash the OS onto a micro SD card. I just kind of plundered one from an old cell phone I had lying around, and you just put it on there, plug it in, and you're ready to go. But the really cool thing about it, because it's open source, is that you can make your own skills, and you can decide exactly what goes into those skills. And I know that Alexa and Google Home also have those options, but they're more strict in terms of what you're allowed to do with them. Mycroft is just, you can do anything you want, so long as you have an API. You can ask Mycroft things like, hey Mycroft, what was this day in history 25 years ago? And if you have the API and you have some honestly fairly basic knowledge of Python and Linux, you can put it together with no problem. What I like about it is that there's not a lot that's actually stored on the cloud. While it does require an internet connection to work, Mycroft specifically doesn't. The company doesn't hold on to any of your data like any of those other companies do, and they wouldn't use it for marketing stuff to you. So as someone who's really concerned about data security, that's something that's really important to me. And I feel that Mycroft really is kind of exemplary in that respect. Like, their entire business model is based on privacy. I'm a big fan of privacy, and the thing about Google Home and Alexa is they're both really, really good products, but they're really good because they rely on a lot of data farming and a lot of like questionable practices that, you know, I personally, and I feel like a lot of people, aren't necessarily comfortable with. So Mycroft is a privacy-focused company. They work with Firefox and I believe a couple other brands. So basically it works like any other voice assistant. You can turn it on with Hey Mycroft, and there are several skills that come pre-installed. My personal favorite is the more basic ones. I really like the weather skill. You know, I'm in the Midwest and we just came out of the polar vortex where it was -32 plus wind chill for like a week. And so I would get up every morning and I'd say, hey Mycroft, what's the weather? And he'd say -35, and I'd say, thanks Mycroft, acceptable. And then I'd go right back to bed and stay there for the entire day. You can also use Mycroft for a lot of other stuff that you'd use a regular voice assistant for. There's a skill for a Telegram bot, which basically allows you to send messages to people. There's a timer, reminder, clock function. Those are super helpful on a day-to-day basis. The thing I'm most excited to try is the OpenHab configuration. OpenHab is a smart home program, and Mycroft actually has an integration with OpenHab so that you can actually run your entire home using the smart speaker. The software is completely free. I do pay $20 annually just as kind of a donation thing, but there's really not that much difference because the code itself is open source. You can just go on GitHub, it's a public project, and you can just clone it right into your repository and start fiddling around with it today if you wanted. Altogether, I'd say my setup cost me around about $100. The put together version, there's currently a version 1 that is out, and then there's a version 2 that is currently on Indiegogo. I'll put a link in the description. Both of those would run you around $200. So I saved a bit of money, and honestly, I really enjoyed just having the freedom to put together a voice assistant by myself. I have the option of choosing what parts I use, what speakers I use, and I'm actually gonna be putting up a video as soon as I get around to doing it of making a 3D printed case for all of these components so that I can have a completely unique look instead of just, you know, the cylinders that you get from Alexa or Google Home or the dots. So that's all I really have for you guys. I'm gonna put a montage of just like all the cool stuff you can do with Mycroft, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey Mycroft, remind me to start breakfast at 8 a.m. every morning.
Sure, saving a reminder for tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
Hey Mycroft, how do you spell disestablishmentarianism?
DISESTABLISHMENTARIANISM